Welcome to Design Domination, where you'll gain confidence, clarity, and a competitive edge in a crowded marketplace so you can dominate your competition. Hi, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Colleen Grotzer, and in this episode of Design Domination, I'm getting into how to raise your rates. Stick around to get lots of tips on this topic and find out how to keep your clients and your dignity while doing it. Now, first off, you might be wondering, when should you raise your rates, right? Well, the new year is a good time to take a look at your rates and also to raise them. Rising expenses are another reason. Costs for all kinds of things go up every year, right? Internet, software, phone bills, electricity, and so forth. But a lot of times graphic designers forget to raise their rates or are afraid to raise their rates. And I know because I've been guilty of it in the past. In fact, I remember even looking back at one client's rate and losing my mind when I saw that I hadn't raised the rate in 5 years. Okay, but over time, as your expenses increase, if you don't raise your rates, you're going to be less profitable. But also over time, your skills get better and you get faster, and it only makes sense to raise your rates to reflect that. And that's because you're providing a better service to clients and you're getting the work done faster. And so that's a win-win for them. It's also a good time to raise your rates when you have new skills or services to offer, or you've decided to specialize. When you specialize in a certain type of work or industry, you deepen your expertise in that area, and that also benefits clients. Something else to think about is when clients always accept your rates without question. That could be a sign that it's time to raise your rates. If your schedule is full and you're in high demand, it's time to raise your rates. If you're overworking yourself, you need to raise those rates and cut some hours. You can work fewer hours and get paid even more. Another reason is an increased scope of work. If the scope of work for a project increases, you should increase your price for the project. More work means it's going to cost more, and this should always be immediately conveyed to the client. You also can consider the length of the relationship with the client. If you've worked with a client for a few years and never raised your rates, like I did, then it's time to raise your rates. Another point to consider is the value you bring to the table. In some situations, you might be the sole freelance designer for a client who has no in-house designer. And I was actually in this role for several clients over the years. If that's the case for you, think about how much it would cost them to employ a full-time designer. Okay, not only that, but they'd have to pay them benefits too. That's a lot of overhead. And that's probably a lot more than they're paying you now. So consider that, especially if they treat you like an employee. And I don't mean the IRS classification of an employee versus a contractor either. I mean that they expect you to give them priority over other clients, that they expect you'll be available anytime they have something for you to do. They just feel entitled. I've had several clients over my career that treated me like this, and it really pissed me off when I thought of it this way because it's true, and they should be paying for that. I even had one client who used to work where I did at a full-time job, and she would call me at my full-time job. That's a lot of nerve. And sometimes it's the clients that try to nickel and dime you who treat you this way. Now, just because is also a reason to raise your rates. You don't need a reason. It's your business. And if you want to raise your rates, you can do that at any time. And that's because you're in charge. Now, even though you're in charge, and they're your rates and you can change them whenever you like, that doesn't mean that I recommend doing that. I wouldn't go tell clients that you're raising your rates around the holidays. I wouldn't recommend raising your rates with them if you know they're having financial difficulty. If you're unable to deliver work on time or clients are unhappy, I would not raise my rates with them. You also don't want to raise rates on a client that you just started working with maybe a month or two ago, just because you're raising rates in the new year, for example, because that could make them feel like you gave them a lower rate to hook them and then you did a bait and switch. Now, what really stinks is that most designers shy away from raising their rates, especially when it's early on in your career. We designers are usually empathetic people who hate confrontation. And so the money conversation usually feels really awkward. I remember how I used to literally sweat and squirm while talking to clients about money, and then it's like, well, what if my work isn't good enough to justify a higher rate? What if they don't think your work is worth it, right? What if they go in search of a cheaper designer? Well, FYI, they can always find a cheaper designer at any time, right? They're everywhere. And I've actually had clients come back to me after an experience with a cheaper designer. Okay, but anyway, none of these are fun thoughts, and they all stem from our fears. And let me tell you, I've made a lot of good decisions in my life, but I've also allowed a lot of what ifs and fears make decisions for me. Okay, it's very nerve-wracking. You feel out of control. And then you end up making decisions on bad data, things that are not reality, or you end up not taking action because you're scared. You might make up excuses so that you don't take action because taking action is uncomfortable. And then you tell yourself, well, I can't raise my rates. My work isn't good enough. My clients will leave. I've said all of these things. So first, I want to help you put things into perspective, okay? Think about your own behavior when it comes to companies who raise their rates, right? So think about your internet provider, your Adobe subscription, your phone bill, your stock photo account, electricity, anything, right? Now, keep in mind, you don't usually have any personal connection to these companies like you do with your clients, right? But when these companies go and raise their rates, you might stay with them. And that's because maybe you've come to know what to expect from them. And the fear of the unknown is worse. You don't have time to research other choices. It's easier to stay with them than it is to change. They may have few competitors, so you have few other options. Maybe you're okay paying more because you find the service to be worth it. Maybe you agree with their values or mission, so you're happy to pay more. Maybe they're a local business and you'd rather support a local business. Now think about your interaction with your clients. It's very personal. They're working one-on-one with you. And most clients want to work with you because you do good work or because they like your work ethic, personality, or your values, or all of the above. And that's really hard to find. They also don't want to necessarily spend the time or risk of working with someone new and getting used to their process or them getting used to theirs. There's a getting to know you time investment up front when you work with a new client. So let me ask you this. Why are your rates any different from these other companies that you have no personal connection to? Why are you willing to pay more for their services so easily? Now, the other thing to think about is that clients don't want you to go out of business. They want you to stay in business so that you can continue to serve them. So that's in their best interest for you to make enough money to stay in business. Before you go raising your rates, you can do some research. You can check out several resources for going rates for your types of design work. You can check out the Graphic Artist Guild Handbook, Pricing and Ethical Guidelines. You can check out Freelance Map's Freelancer Study. You can also check out Payoneer's 2022 Global Freelancer Income Report and Juno's 2022 Freelancer Rates Report. And I have links to these in the notes. You can also ask people who hire for this work in a particular industry what they typically pay for certain types of projects. But whatever you do, don't compare yourself to designers on Upwork, Fiverr, or other websites like that. A lot of designers will lower their rates to get work there, even if it's not profitable for them. And they also tend to charge hourly, which isn't a good way to price because it's basing your fee on time and not your expertise. You can also ask other designers, but keep in mind that certain differences might mean that you need to charge less or more than them, okay? Which could be location, standard of living, the quality of the work, the type of design work, a specialization in a certain type of work, what is included with the work, and expenses. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. Now, assessing how much you need to charge will tell you how much you need to raise your rates. So many designers are grossly undercharging. I know of several designers who were always busy but weren't profitable. They didn't pay attention to their expenses. And you've simply got to know what your expenses are. Not only that, you've got to account for the increasing cost of living each year. A good guideline for raising rates is about between 5% and 20%, and that's depending on how underpriced your current rates are. Okay, so now let's talk about how to tell clients that you're raising your prices. Well, raising rates for new clients is Easy. You just give them your new rate. They don't need to know that it's a new higher rate than what you've been charging. And this also gives you the opportunity to test out new rates. So for instance, if new clients don't object, that could mean you could potentially charge even more. Approaching existing clients, on the other hand, it can feel scary because you fear that they're going to find another designer. And they might, but that's usually not the case. That's our fear talking most of the time. When you go to raise your pricing with existing clients, there are a few things to keep in mind. If you've got a client or two or three that you really need financially, you might want to raise your rates in smaller increments over time. You might also want to include something a little extra that won't add to your workload, such as a consultation call every so often, or maybe including extra revisions for clients that make a ton of them. Maybe give them a higher flat rate instead of charging hourly for all their excessive revisions. And then you could simply, for each new project, start providing pricing that is slightly higher than it's been in the past, and also add a second higher priced option that includes a bit more value to them, like getting it done super quickly instead of at your usual time frame. This could be a VIP day option where you and the client designate a day or two to work together. Sarah Massey and I talked about VIP days not that long ago, but it doesn't have to be that. It could just be a lower price with a longer time frame and then a higher price with a rush time frame. And what all this does is help give them a choice rather than them just saying no. I like to call this an out or fallback, and it's helped me test the waters with higher pricing in the past. You could also offer a choice of 3 packages where the highest one really exists only to make the other 2 packages look like a deal. This is price anchoring. Think of what you can offer that will add value to clients and then offer them more convenience. And then also consider options that they may not have asked for that you think would be beneficial and help them get the results that they're looking for. I mean, this could be managing more of the project. Maybe you manage more with the printer or the mail house on their behalf, or maybe you create social media templates that go along with their new branding. So maybe they come to you for a logo design and you're like, here's the price to do that, plus these social media templates that I think will be helpful. So that's an option. So you can raise your rates more with the new clients and less with existing ones if you need to. And you'll definitely want to make mention of the increased value to them because that's going to reinforce to them how good they've been getting it. And so that could be your increased experience in their particular industry. It could be your increased skills in the type of work that you're doing. It could be that you have a long-term relationship with this client. It could be the fact that you haven't raised your rates in a couple of years or whatever it is. And it could also be that you've given their projects priority or that you've done quality work for them. Your work has always been on time and so forth. You definitely want to be sure to give enough notice, usually 60 to 90 days, but it could be longer than that though, before you actually raise your rates. Giving sufficient notice is the courteous thing to do. It means you're not springing the new rate on them without notice or any time to think about it. It also gives them time to potentially rebudget if they need to. Now, if you know when they do their budgeting, you can give them notice before that time. It also gives them some time to mull it over and make a choice, which is the respectful thing to do, as opposed to putting a bad taste in their mouth by making them feel like they have no choice. It also gives them enough time to find someone else if they decide to go elsewhere. Now, there's always the chance of this happening. In my experience, this rarely happens except with clients who choose you based on price alone. Now, you could potentially include in your contracts that you'll increase your rate X% every year or whatever time period. And that will put them on notice about your price increase, and it will make the conversation easier when you go to have it. And when it comes to actually notifying them, you want to keep the message short and sweet. You could say something like, from time to time, I adjust my rates to account for inflation, or because I've increased my skills or experience in this industry, whatever the case might be for you. And doing so means I can continue to provide you with quality service and even better service. As of such and such date, fill in the blank there, my rate will be X amount per hour, or it'll be X amount for our usual project, again, whatever the case might be. If you have any questions, please reach out. I look forward to continuing to work together. So don't make a big deal about it. I like to end it by saying, please contact me if you have any questions, and I look forward to continue to work together, as opposed to asking them if it's okay or assuming it's going to be a problem for them. Because first off, you don't need their permission, so this keeps you in the driver's seat. But if you're afraid that they might balk at your higher rates and leave, then this usually invites the opportunity for them to voice any concerns. And look, this is going to happen at some point and several times in your career. And it's just because you simply will outgrow certain clients over time. Otherwise, if you're happy to be rid of them, if they don't want to pay the higher prices, then you can simply add that you'll recommend another freelance designer who might be a good fit. Now, it's okay to have this conversation by phone, but if you do that, you just want to follow it up with something in writing. And if you do talk on the phone, please state your new rates as a statement that ends in a period, not a question mark, because you're not asking their permission. And I say this because I remember when I would do that and how I sounded so wishy-washy about it when talking to clients. Like I was asking for their permission. Like they were running my business, not me. And I remember how that felt. And I remember this time that the CEO of a nonprofit who had been a client for like 15 or 16 years, and one of my biggest clients, when I said that I was raising my rates and I gave some estimates of what these new project fees would be like, he actually had the audacity to ask me for a meeting with him and the board of directors because he said he frankly didn't understand how I charged and wanted me to explain it to them. I fired them immediately. That was a huge sign of disrespect that I could not stomach. And I didn't need to justify. You don't need to justify your rates to anyone, ever. How you come up with what you charge is your business. You're not an employee agreeing to a salaried paycheck, right? You're in charge of what you charge. And by the way, what other client or customer tells a business what to charge? Or how did they come up with that fee? Nobody does that, right? So if you get a reaction like I got that time and you can't fire them because it would put you in financial distress, then create an exit plan. Leave their rate as it is and then just work on getting new, better, more respectful clients at your new rate in a period of maybe, 2 to 6 months. There are always going to be clients who are so focused on price that they'll go elsewhere when you raise your rates. And you know what? It does not mean you did anything wrong. And I used to feel like that. Oh no, now I did something wrong to piss them off and now they're leaving. I shouldn't have raised my rate. No, it doesn't mean that I shouldn't have raised my rates, right? This is always going to happen. You're going to outgrow clients. Like I mentioned, this is just going to happen. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Now, another strategy with clients who balk at your new rate is to simply charge the same amount, but simply include less work, right? So that can be fewer designs or fewer revisions going forward. I know raising rates is scary, and I want to leave you with a few final thoughts. And that is, you are in charge of your rates. Only you know if your rates are profitable or not. And shying away from the conversation of raising your rates will only keep you from being able to make more money. It will keep your business stagnant. And raising your rates should feel somewhat uncomfortable, a little scary to do, right? And you're probably still undercharging. So please don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone and be assertive. I know what that's like. I know how hard it is to take that step. But if you don't do it, it will keep you stuck. And the other thing too is you can't live in fear of losing clients. Then you're always at their whim, which means they're running your business. And if you stay at the whim of what clients are willing to pay and don't ask for what you're worth, well, you might as well have a full-time job. There are always other clients out there who will value what you do and happily pay your rates, okay? And let me tell you, it feels so freaking good once you have this conversation and start charging your new rate. It's not just a win for your business. It's a win for you. It's a win for your confidence. Okay, so remember, your rates are a statement, not a question. Start off each client relationship and project with questions that will help you charge more by enhancing the perceived value of your work and get more respect as a designer. Get the free guide at creative-boost.com/questions.